Talia Monroe had an afro, and she was black, and that was all it took for the bullies to make her their target. They'd mocked her for weeks, testing her patience, daring her to push back. But when humiliation wasn't enough, they came with something else, an electric hair trimmer and a plan to put her in her place. But Talia Monroe doesn't forget, and she doesn't forgive. They thought they'd get away with it. They were wrong. Because what they didn't know was that Talia Monroe was a trained fighter and a ruthless boxer. Now, she's coming for every single one of them, and when she's done, they'll wish they never touched her. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The hallway always buzzed before the bell. A mix of voices, sneaker squeaks, and the high-pitched whine of locker doors slammed shut too fast. Talia Monroe moved through it quietly. Not slow, not fast, just steady, slipping past noise like a shadow that had learned to make itself small without ever shrinking. Her black hoodie was pulled halfway up, not to hide, just to focus. Most people didn't even notice her until she passed them. And even then, it was usually just a glance. The girls didn't talk to her much unless they needed help with homework. The boys didn't bother at all, unless they were trying to get a laugh at someone else's expense. That was the game here. Laugh or be laughed at. Speak up and make it worse, or take it and hope they got bored. But Talia wasn't built to laugh along. Not for that, not for them. She kept her hair natural, full and thick, soft in the middle, and tighter toward the edges, shaped round and proud like her mama always said it should be. Coach Renee Monroe, her mother when they were off the mat, her coach the rest of the time, used to say a good afro was like a crown. It wasn't about fashion, it was about history, about pride. That crown had taken years to grow right, to shape and hold without frizzing out or falling flat. Every morning, Talia picked it out with care, not because she needed anyone's approval, but because it belonged to her. Like her fists, like her silence, like her rage, tucked away in a corner that very few people ever got to see. She was a fighter, but not the kind anyone in this school knew about. The posters in her gym back home said, "Speak with your hands, not your mouth." She followed that rule. It had kept her out of trouble in this place. Until now. Brad Matthews leaned against the lockers with that usual smug lean of his, legs crossed at the ankle, arms folded like he owned the space. Next to him stood Trevor, taller, broader, dumber. Cole was a few feet off, phone out, thumbs busy. Same group, same routine. They'd been picking at her since September. Nothing heavy. Not at first. Just the usual mess, comments about her hair, jokes about how quiet she was, saying she looked like she'd just walked out of the 70s. Some days they tried to imitate her walk. Other days they'd whisper Angela Davis like it was an insult and chuckle like they understood the reference. They didn't. They never did. Today, though, something shifted. Brad's voice was louder than usual. He wanted an audience. A group of girls had gathered near the water fountain, juniors from the volleyball team. Brad noticed. He liked to perform when girls were watching. "Yo, Talia," he said, loud and casual, pushing off the locker with that fake smile he used when he was gearing up to humiliate someone. "I've been meaning to ask, how do you keep all that fuzz from clogging the shower drain? You got like a sponge stuck to your head or something?" Trevor burst out laughing. Too loud, too fast. Cole didn't even look up. He was already recording. Talia stopped. She turned her head, slow and steady, and locked eyes with Brad. For a moment, the hallway noise faded. She hadn't said a word to them all year, hadn't even given them a glance. But today, after weeks of restraint, something inside her shifted. "You know what's funny?" she said. Voice calm, tone flat, words as sharp as broken glass. "You've been running that mouth since September, thinking you're clever, thinking you're slick. But every time I look at you, all I see is a boy too scared to grow his own hair talking about someone else's. You act like a clown in front of girls just to get a laugh. But you're not funny. You're not smart. You're just loud. And honestly, that's sad. The girls near the fountain fell silent. One of them gasped. Trevor's grin faltered. Brad blinked. Talia didn't wait for a response. She turned and kept walking. Same pace, same posture. But behind her, Brad's smile cracked, and his pride started bleeding beneath it. The moment didn't last long. By the time she reached her classroom, the buzz had returned, louder this time, humming with whispers and side eyes. Someone said, "She roasted him." Someone else said, "She's crazy." Brad said nothing, but the look in his eyes when he passed her desk said it all. He wasn't embarrassed. He was angry. And angry boys in groups didn't let things go. Not when pride was on the line. Not when the whole hallway had seen them get verbally folded by a girl who never even raised her voice. What Talia didn't know, not yet, was that the next time they saw her, they wouldn't try to get the last word. They'd go for something else. Something cruel. Something permanent. And the moment they reached for her crown, they wouldn't just break school rules. They'd break the last thread holding her silence together. By the time lunch rolled around, the story had already twisted itself into something bigger than what actually happened. That's how it worked in a place like this. Truth didn't travel as fast as exaggeration, and people loved a show more than a fact. Some said Talia had cussed Brad out in front of a whole crowd. Others claimed she shoved him. A few even insisted she slapped him. None of that happened. But by the time she walked into the cafeteria, heads were turning and whispers were dancing from table to table, each one thick with drama and dripping with fake concern. Brad sat at his usual spot near the window, surrounded by Trevor, Cole, and the rest of the jocks who orbited him like satellites, waiting for a cue to laugh or throw in a comment that might earn them a nod of approval. He didn't say anything when Talia walked in, but he didn't need to. The look he gave her said it all. It wasn't rage, not the kind that boiled over. It was colder than that, calculated, like he was taking inventory of every pair of eyes that had seen her embarrass him, and already deciding how to flip the story to make sure those same eyes saw something different next time. She sat down at the far end, back against the wall, tray untouched, earbuds in. She wasn't listening to music, though. She just needed space, the kind that made people think twice before sitting next to her. She chewed through her thoughts more than her food, replaying what she said, wondering if she should have just stayed quiet. But every time she circled back, something in her stomach tightened. She didn't regret it. Not a single word. The next day, things got pettier. Brad and Trevor bumped into her accidentally in the hallway. Brad muttered something under his breath about bumping into trash. Talia didn't stop. Cole posted a meme that looked just enough like her to get laughs, without being obvious enough to get flagged. Someone started calling her Cotton Top. Another kid mimed spraying Febreze when she walked by. It was the same kind of cowardice she'd seen before. Nothing direct, nothing serious enough to report. Just that constant hum of disrespect. Always just out of reach, always with a smile fake enough to call innocent if anyone important was watching. Her friend Ava tried to pull her aside that afternoon. Eyes wide, voice low. "You gotta be careful," she said. "Brad's mad for real. I heard him talking about getting even. Said you made him look weak in front of Jenna. He's not letting that slide." Talia didn't flinch. "Let him try?" Ava looked worried. "No, I mean it. He's stupid, but he's not above doing something shady. You think that hallway moment embarrassed him? You took his mask off in front of half the school. He's gonna do something. Just don't be alone with them. I'm not scared of him. I didn't say you were, but scared or not, be smart." Talia gave a small nod and walked off, but the warning stuck. It wasn't fear that crept in, it was anticipation. She didn't want a fight. But if one came, she wasn't planning on walking away, the loser. At home, things were quiet. Too quiet. Her mom noticed the shift before she even opened her mouth. She could always read Talia like an open book. It was something about the way she sat down at the dinner table. Tense shoulders, clenched jaw, eyes that stayed focused on the same spot in her rice. "You training angry?" her mom asked between bites, tone even but pointed. "I'm not angry." "You're never angry." "But that don't mean you're fine." Talia hesitated. "Some guys at school been bothering me. One of them finally said something stupid enough for me to say something back. That's all." Her dad raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Her mom leaned forward. "You handle it in the ring or in the hallway?" "I handled it with words." Her mom exhaled. "Good, but words don't always end things." "I know." Her dad finally spoke. "Remember what I told you. You don't start a fight. But if they bring it to you, you end it. Quick and clean. No flexing. No showboating. I know. You're not just you out there, Talia. You're us. Your hair, your name, your skin. That's all part of the fight whether you want it to be or not. That crown on your head means something. Don't let nobody take it without making damn sure they pay for it." Talia nodded again. Slower this time. Deeper. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. By Friday, the tension was thick enough to feel it when she walked into class. It was fourth period history. Mr. Halverson stood at the front, half distracted, flipping through papers and mumbling something about a substitute not showing up on time. Talia took her seat near the back. Brad sat diagonally across from her, Trevor 2 desks over, Cole in the corner. None of them said anything, but they didn't have to. Their silence said more than their jokes ever could. They were waiting. And Talia didn't know it yet, but the next time Mr. Halvorsen stepped out of that room, he wouldn't just be giving them space. He'd be giving them an opportunity. The classroom always felt colder during fourth period, like the AC vent above the whiteboard worked overtime only in this room. The lights buzzed faintly overhead, and the afternoon sun filtered through half-lowered blinds, casting long lines across desks that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. The smell of dry erase markers hung in the air, mixed with old paper, and the leftover stink of cafeteria fries stuck to someone's hoodie. Talia sat near the back, her pen in hand, but her eyes weren't on her notebook. They were fixed quietly on Brad's reflection in the black screen of the powered-off projector. He wasn't looking at her. Not directly, but every so often he'd turn slightly in his chair and say something to Trevor, low enough to keep it off the radar, loud enough to make sure she heard the laughter. Cole had his phone out, fake typing, fake scrolling, just angling it to keep the lens pointed in her direction. None of it was new, but today it felt different, tighter, quieter, like something was winding up behind the scenes. Mr. Halverson was at his desk, shuffling through worksheets with the kind of energy that said he didn't want to be there any more than the students did. He stood, checked his watch, and sighed. "All right, I'll be right back," he said, already halfway to the door. Principal's office called. "You all know the drill. Stay seated, no noise, and no phones." He didn't wait for acknowledgement. The door clicked shut behind him, and just like that, the air changed. For a few seconds, nothing happened, just the scrape of a chair, someone clearing their throat, the soft hum of the AC. Then Brad stood up. The stretch was deliberate, slow. Trevor rose with him, cracking his knuckles like a warm-up act. Cole didn't move, just angled his phone. "Hey, Talia," Brad said, that familiar smirk creeping across his face, voice too loud for comfort. "You ever think about switching it up? That looks kinda tired. Could use a little update." She didn't respond. Trevor snorted. "You mean like a fresh cut?" Brad pulled something from his backpack. The sound that followed snapped the room out of its stillness. A harsh, electric buzz, unmistakable. Hair clippers. Some kids laughed. One said, "No way," almost under their breath. Talia's heart jumped. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't play with me!" But Brad was already walking toward her. "I'm helping," he said, loud and grinning. "Come on, don't act like it's a big deal. It's just hair, right?" She stood, but not fast enough. Trevor moved behind her, grabbed her wrist, and shoved her back into her seat. Her chair scraped against the tiles as she twisted. "Let go of me!" she yelled, her voice sharp, panic rising in her throat. "Relax," Trevor muttered, laughing nervously. "We're just giving you a touch-up." "Get off me!" She jerked her body sideways, but Cole had already moved in, grabbing the back of the chair to steady her. Brad stepped in close, clippers humming, eyes locked on her hair. "Hold her still!" Talia bucked hard, screamed louder this time. "Stop it! I'm not playing with you!" Trevor's grip tightened. Cole pressed down harder. Brad leaned in, and the buzz met scalp. Hair scattered onto her desk. The first swipe sent a jolt down her spine, like a punch to the gut. She screamed. A sound that didn't come from anger. It came from something deeper, something raw. The room snapped alive with gasps and stunned silence, but nobody moved to help. A few students had pulled out phones. One girl stood frozen, hand over her mouth, watching like it wasn't real. Brad was laughing, loud enough to drown her out. "Oh yeah," he yelled, stepping back to admire the spot he'd carved. "That's better. Look at that patch. You think this is funny?" Talia twisted again, kicked, screamed, tried to throw her weight forward, but Cole and Trevor held her down like it was a game. Her arms flailed, her feet scraped, her voice cracked from how hard she was yelling. Another swipe buzzed through the edge of her crown, rough and deliberate. "I said get off me!" Brad leaned in for another pass, but this time her elbow connected with something solid. She didn't know who she hit. Trevor, maybe. But his grip loosened. She twisted, ripped her arm free, and slammed the heel of her palm into Cole's chest. He stumbled backward, dropped his phone, and cursed. That was all she needed. Talia surged to her feet, knocking the chair over. Her hands flew to her head, touching the uneven patches, the torn edges, the soft clumps that were no longer there. She gasped, not from pain, but from the shock of it. Her hair, her crown, violated, gone in pieces. Brad took one step back, clippers still buzzing in his hand. "You're dead," Talia whispered, her breath ragged, her chest heaving. The room went silent, and she didn't stop shaking. Not yet. Brad was still laughing, but it had changed. The swagger in his voice was starting to break, his smile flickering like he couldn't decide whether he was still in control or just pretending to be. His friends had backed off a few steps, suddenly unsure now that Talia was upright. Her hands trembling not from fear, but fury, her chest rising and falling like every breath she took had weight behind it. The clippers still buzzed in his hand, though he wasn't using them anymore, just holding them out like a weapon he didn't know how to aim. Talia's fingers touched the sheared spot again, and something inside her hardened. It wasn't just the hair. It was everything behind it. Every time she'd swallowed her pride to keep the peace. Every moment she let something slide because she knew what it would cost to push back. Every fake laugh, every narrowed stare from teachers who never said a word. And now, this. She looked up. Brad's smirk was already fading. She stepped forward once, her shoulders squared, eyes locked. He tried to wave it off, flashing that smug grin again. "Hey, it's just a joke. Chill out." But she didn't stop. Trevor stepped in between them. "Yo, she's tripping, Brad." That was all he got out before she planted her foot and drove her fist straight into his gut. Not wild, not messy, clean, hard, and right where it hurt most. Trevor folded forward with a groan, eyes bulging, knees buckling as he staggered back against a desk and dropped. The room exploded into motion. Brad shouted something, trying to grab her shoulder, but Talia spun and slammed the back of her elbow into his jaw. He reeled sideways, stumbled, dropped the clippers, and caught himself against the front row's edge. She turned on Cole next, who had his phone raised again like it might shield him. "Don't touch me! I didn't do anything!" he shouted. "You held me down." He tried to backpedal, but his foot caught the leg of a chair. Talia grabbed his collar and shoved him into the desk behind him. He hit hard, the phone skidding across the tiles as he landed. The camera kept rolling, tilted at an awkward angle, but still catching the blur of movement and the stunned faces of students frozen in place. Someone screamed. Another kid shouted, "Oh my God!" Phones were out now, dozens of them, recording from every corner, some filming just for proof, others filming because it was the kind of chaos people liked to watch even when they didn't understand it. Brad came up from behind, teeth gritted, rage finally replacing arrogance. He reached for her arm, yelling, "Crazy!" Talia turned, ducked under his reach, and drove a right hook square into his ribs. The sound wasn't theatrical. It was dull and sickening, the kind of thud that made people wince just hearing it. Brad doubled over, coughing, falling to one knee. She grabbed him by the collar and pushed him flat onto the floor. The classroom was silent again, not because the fight was over, but because the people who usually had something to say, who usually joked or jeered or commented from the sidelines, had nothing left to offer. Every camera stayed on her, every face stared. Talia stood in the middle of it all, chest heaving, eyes wild, her afro ragged and uneven, the left side shaved raw while the rest stood full and proud. Her fists were still clenched, shoulders locked, and the only sound in the room was the distant whir of the clippers, still buzzing softly on the floor like the echo of a threat that no longer had power. No one moved. No one dared. Then the door slammed open. Mr. Halverson froze in the doorway, phone still in hand, whatever excuse he'd left with instantly forgotten. His eyes scanned the room, the overturned desks, the three boys crumpled on the ground, the clippers near the window, the students still filming, too shocked to pretend they weren't. And in the middle of it all, Talia. He took a step in, stunned. What? What the hell happened? No one answered. No one could. Brad groaned on the floor, trying to sit up. Trevor coughed from behind a desk. Cole whimpered something, reaching for his phone with shaking hands. The rest of the class just stared. Talia didn't say a word. She looked at Mr. Halverson, then at the others, and slowly let her hands open. She wasn't breathing hard anymore. Her voice, when it came, was calm again. Still low, but it carried. They thought it was funny. She didn't have to explain. The room had seen enough, but the world outside that door? They hadn't seen what led up to it, and the way things were already spinning, they were about to hear only part of the story. The principal's office felt smaller than it looked. The walls were too close, the air too still, and the lighting too bright, like it had been set deliberately to highlight tension. The fluorescent hum above Talia's head only made her headache worse. Her legs bounced under the chair without meaning to, every muscle still humming with leftover adrenaline. But her fists weren't clenched anymore. They were open now, resting on her knees, fingers twitching with each passing second. Her knuckles were red and tender, a little swollen. But that wasn't what she noticed most. It was the weight, the uneven weight on her head. She kept running her hand over it. The thick coils on one side, the patchy stubble on the other. Every time her fingers brushed over the raw spot, the burn returned, not just on her scalp, but in her chest, in her throat. She pressed her lips together, held her breath, tried to bite it back. But the tears still came, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet drops that she wiped away fast, like she didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. She wasn't crying because she lost. She was crying because she hadn't been given a choice. Mr. Halverson stood near the door, arms crossed tight, like he was trying to hold the whole situation in place by sheer posture. Principal Grant sat behind her desk, palms flat against the surface, trying to look neutral. But the edge in her voice said she was already past that. "Let me be clear," she said, eyes moving from Talia to the three boys on the opposite side of the room, all of them slouched and bruised, clothes scuffed, pride still leaking through clenched jaws. "You're all in serious trouble. I don't care who started what. This kind of violence is unacceptable." Talia opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her throat was tight, swollen with the scream she hadn't let loose when the clippers touched her head. Brad spoke first. "She attacked us. She went off," Trevor added. We were just messing around. It was a joke. A joke? Talia's voice cracked before she could stop it, sharp and raw. You held me down and shaved my hair. We didn't shave your whole head, Cole snapped, leaning forward. It was just a little patch. Hair grows back. Talia turned, fast, eyes blazing. You touched me. You grabbed me. You cut my hair like I was some animal. And now you want to say it was just a joke? Principal Grant held up a hand, sharp. That's enough. Talia sank back in the chair, fists balling again. The tears were still there, but now they were mixed with something else. Shame, rage, confusion. She didn't know which feeling was strongest, but they all kept swirling together, like a storm that wouldn't settle. Mr. Halverson finally spoke. I stepped out for less than 10 minutes. I didn't think, you didn't think at all, Talia said, cutting him off without looking at him. You leave us alone almost every day. They knew that. Brad laughed under his breath. Not loud, but loud enough. Talia snapped toward him, tears smudging the corners of her eyes. You think this is funny? Principal Grant slammed her palm against the desk. Enough! The silence that followed was heavier than before. You assaulted 3 students, she said, turning back to Talia. Regardless of what they did first, you responded with physical violence. And that comes with consequences. You're kidding, Talia whispered, voice breaking. I'm not. Brad leaned back in his chair, ice pack now pressed half-heartedly against the bruise forming on his cheek. Told you she's got anger issues. Talia shot him a look that could have shattered glass, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. Her voice had gone somewhere else, buried beneath the shame of that awful buzzing sound. The laughter. The cold pull of metal against her scalp. She could still hear it, still feel it, even with the clippers gone. Principal Grant exhaled. You're suspended for 3 days, effective immediately. Talia blinked. What about them? They'll each receive formal warnings, pending further review. But there's no video evidence of the incident itself, only the fight. And unfortunately, that puts us in a very difficult position. Talia laughed, short and bitter. More air than sound. So I get jumped, assaulted, humiliated, and because nobody filmed that part, I'm the one getting punished? You escalated it. I defended myself. You lost control. Talia stood, chair scraping hard against the floor. I didn't lose control. I took it back. You don't get to decide that. Talia shook her head slowly, her hands curled into trembling fists. No, I don't, do I? Because I'm not the one this school protects. Her voice didn't rise, but the words hit harder than any punch. Principal Grant didn't answer. Mr. Halverson looked at the floor. Brad smirked again, and Talia walked out of that room with her jaw clenched and her hands shaking, still feeling the pieces of her crown lying somewhere back in that classroom, scattered between clumps of hair and the echoes of her scream. The car ride home was quiet, but not peaceful. The silence between Talia and her mother wasn't the kind that came from calm. It was the kind that formed when anger sat just beneath the surface, too thick to speak through without cracking open something neither of them were ready to deal with in that moment. Coach Renee kept her eyes on the road, hands locked tight around the steering wheel, jaw clenched so hard her cheekbones flexed with every red light. Talia sat slouched against the passenger door, hoodie pulled low, arms wrapped around herself like she could somehow cover what had been taken. Her left hand kept drifting to her head, brushing across the uneven edges where her afro had been torn. Every time her fingers landed on skin where there should have been curls, she flinched like it was the first time all over again. The tears had dried, but the burn remained. At home, she headed straight for her room. Her dad tried to say something, she didn't hear what. But her mom cut in fast with a look that said, "Not now." The door closed behind her without a slam, just the soft, heavy thud of someone who no longer wanted to make noise. She stood in front of the mirror, eyes locked on her reflection. The hoodie came off slowly, her shoulders tensed. Then she pulled off her headband, and what she saw made her stomach drop all over again. The damage wasn't just bad, it was violent. 2 patches were shaved clean, rough and raw against the dark fullness of the rest. Jagged spots, no symmetry, no care. They hadn't been trying to make a joke. They wanted to humiliate her, to remind her that even something as personal, as sacred, as her hair could be taken if she didn't stay in her place. Her hands clenched around the fabric in her lap, eyes stinging again, but the tears didn't fall this time. She wasn't sure if she'd run out, or if something colder had taken their place. Downstairs, her parents sat at the table, both silent, both tense. 3 days, her mother said finally, voice low but sharp. She gets 3 days for defending herself. And those boys get, what, a slap on the wrist? Her father rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's not justice. But we expected that. No, she snapped. We didn't expect this. Not this deep. They didn't suspend her because of the fight. They suspended her because she embarrassed them. She made a scene they couldn't control. Coach Renee leaned back in her chair, eyes hard. Oh, she got attacked in a classroom, held down, and they're treating her like she's the criminal? He nodded. Because that's easier. Because that keeps the parents from calling. But the calls came anyway. By evening, the footage had hit the school's group chats, and then moved to Instagram. 30 seconds of chaos. Talia throwing punches, Brad on the floor, Trevor holding his stomach, Cole knocked back against a desk. No context, no sound from before. Just the fight, over and over, from 3 different angles. One video had nearly 5,000 views by midnight. The caption underneath read, "Angry girl goes crazy, our Afro thunder." The comments were worse. "She's out of control. It's just hair. Calm down. Why is she even allowed to be at that school? Where are her parents? If a boy did that to a girl, he'd be in jail." Her inbox was full. Her name was being thrown around in group texts from people she didn't even know. By morning, the school board's voicemail box was flooded. Not with outrage over what the boys had done, but with concern that a violent girl was still enrolled. A threat. A disruption. They didn't see the clippers. They didn't hear the laughter. They didn't feel her being held down. They just saw a black girl swinging. Talia sat on her bed, phone face down, breathing through her teeth. Her father stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with that stillness he only had when he was weighing every word before letting one loose. "They're spinning it already," he said. She didn't answer. "They're loud. We're gonna have to be louder." Her voice came low. "They're winning." "No, they're early." Her mother appeared behind him, hands on her hips, that fire back in her eyes. "We're not letting them bury this. You hear me?" Talia looked up, the pain still thick in her face, the raw edge still fresh. "They all think I'm crazy." Her mother stepped into the room and crouched beside the bed. "Then we show them the truth. Every second, every clip, every lie. We expose it. But there's no video of what they did, only the fight. That stopped them." Her mother frowned. Her father's jaw tightened. The silence that followed was heavy. Then Talia said it quietly, almost to herself. The thought just forming. Cole had his phone out. The whole time. Her mother turned fast. "You sure?" He was recording when it started. "I saw the red light. For the first time all day, something else flickered in the room. Not rage, not sadness. Intent. The school looked different when you walked in through the back lot. No crowd, no announcements, no teachers pretending not to see. Just cold pavement, a rusting bike rack, and a row of classroom windows half fogged from the morning chill. Talia hadn't planned on coming back that day, not with her suspension still in effect, but staying home while the lie kept spreading had started to feel worse than anything they could have said about her. Her parents hadn't stopped her. Her mother just handed her the hoodie, made her tuck her hair beneath the drawstring, and said, "Don't come back empty-handed." She didn't plan to. She moved down the side hall fast, eyes lowered, hood pulled tight, phone clutched in her hand like it was a weapon. She wasn't here to explain herself or argue. She wasn't looking for pity. She just needed the footage. the proof. The only piece of the puzzle that could flip everything back on the boys who'd started it. She found him near the gym, alone for once, standing by the vending machine with a smirk already forming when he noticed her. "Talia, you're not supposed to be." "Shut up." He blinked, thrown off by the tone, by the look in her eyes. She didn't raise her voice, didn't move fast, but the way she walked toward him made him freeze like instinct kicked in before his brain could catch up. "You recorded it," she said. "The whole thing. From the start. I don't know what you're—" "Don't lie to me." He laughed, but it was nervous, forced. "Come on. What would I even—" She reached forward and snatched the phone from his hand before he could react, turned her back to the hallway, and started going through it. He followed, stammering. Hey, you can't just grab my phone." She didn't stop scrolling. "Talia, seriously, give it back. That's private property." "Then call a teacher," she snapped without looking up. "Let's see how much of your private property you want me to show them." The bluff worked. He shut up. She opened the Photos app, scrolled past the fight clips, past the same looped videos that had gone viral, until she found a file dated just before them. 38 seconds long. Her heart picked up. She tapped play. The hallway noise disappeared. The screen lit up. There she was, sitting in the classroom. Brad behind her. Trevor beside her. Cole's camera held low but steady, catching the exchange. The clippers came out. The first shout. Her screams. The laughter. The way they pinned her. Her voice rising. The sound of the first pass. Buzz. Then the rip of hair. Then the second pass. Her elbow landing. Her escape. Everything. Every second of it. She paused the video and looked up, her face unreadable. "You were filming," she said. "The whole time. You saw what they did. You laughed. And then you watched them throw me under the bus like you didn't know a thing." Cole tried to talk, but his voice cracked. I wasn't thinking." "No, you were. You were just thinking about not getting dragged down with them." "I didn't post it. I didn't send it to anyone. You hid it." He hesitated. "You hit me too. You held me down." He looked away, guilt finally starting to settle in the way his shoulders sagged. "I'm sending this to myself," she said, tapping the button. "If you delete it, I'll still have it. If you try to play innocent, I'll show it came from your phone. And if you say one word, to make it sound like I faked this, or cut it, or changed it, I'll bury you with it." He didn't respond. He just stood there, pale and quiet, watching her walk away with the truth clenched in her fist. Back outside, she didn't run. She didn't need to. Her legs felt steady again. Her chest wasn't burning anymore. There was still pain, deep and ugly. But beneath it now was something sharper, something colder. She wasn't going to beg anyone to believe her. She was going to make them. The wind hit sharp as she stepped outside, the cold biting through the front of her hoodie. But Talia barely noticed. Her fingers gripped the phone tight, still warm from Cole's hands, her own blood pounding too fast to feel anything else. The video had sent. She had checked twice. Her phone buzzed with the confirmation. It was hers now. And even if they tried to delete it, erase it, bury it, it wouldn't matter. The evidence existed. The truth had shape now, weight, and for the first time since she walked out of that classroom, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had the upper hand. She cut across the school's back lot, planning to swing through the side gate and take the long walk home. She didn't want to see anyone, didn't want to hear questions or apologies or whispers, not until the footage was out, not until the story was finally hers again. But when she rounded the corner past the dumpsters, her steps faltered. They were waiting. Trevor stood against the wall, hands in his pockets, pretending not to be blocking the only exit. Brad paced a few feet away, shoulders tense, mouth set in a tight line that didn't even try to look like a smile. Both of them were watching her. Too calm, too ready. She stopped in her tracks. "You must think you're slick," Brad said, voice low, words stretched thin with anger. Coming in here like you didn't already make a big enough mess. Trevor stepped forward, slow. Cole told us what you did. I didn't do anything, Talia said flatly. I took back what you tried to hide. Brad's laugh came short and cold. You think anyone's gonna care about that video? You think people are gonna see it and magically forget what you did to us? I don't care what they forget, she said. I care what they see, and they're gonna see everything. He moved closer, his eyes narrowing. Let me see the phone. No, we just want to delete the video, Talia. It's not that deep. She clenched it tighter in her hand. You're not getting it. Trevor's tone shifted. It's just a video. You send it out. We're done. Expelled. Colleges? Gone. Sports? Over. Our families don't bounce back from that. You should have thought about that before you shaved my hair. Brad's jaw tightened. I didn't do anything you didn't ask for when you started running your mouth. Say that again. He didn't. But Trevor did. You think people care about your hair that much? You think the world's gonna line up behind you just 'cause you scream louder? No, she said, stepping back. But they'll care when they see you laughing while you hold me down. She turned, fast, trying to duck past them. But Brad moved first. Give me the phone. No! He lunged. She twisted out of reach, took off down the edge of the field, boots pounding against the cracked pavement. Her heart slammed against her ribs, breath sharp. Phone locked in her palm like a lifeline. Behind her she heard the shouts. Brad yelling her name, Trevor cursing. And then their footsteps. Heavy, angry, close. She cut across the lot, vaulting over a low fence, the chain links rattling behind her as she landed and kept moving. Her legs burned, lungs aching. But she didn't slow down. The path narrowed behind the school's maintenance shed, twisting through a gap between two fences. She ducked low, squeezing through, heard Brad slam into the side, trying to follow. Trevor was still behind him, slower, gasping. Stop running! Then stop chasing! She broke through the gap and hit the main road, darting toward the corner store 2 blocks away. It was mid-morning. Cars were just beginning to pass more steadily. A couple looked her way. No one stopped. She made it to the parking lot, legs wobbling now, chest heaving. She turned to see if they were still behind her. Trevor had given up, hands on his knees, hunched over. But Brad was still coming, face red, teeth clenched, the kind of furious that didn't care who was watching anymore. She ran straight into the store. The bell above the door chimed. The clerk looked up from behind the counter. She didn't say a word, just walked fast to the back, ducked behind the racks of detergent and bottled water, then crouched down low, phone pressed tight to her chest. The door opened again, then a second time. Heavy footsteps followed. She didn't breathe, didn't blink. From where she crouched, she could hear Brad pacing the aisles, huffing, cursing under his breath. But she didn't move, not until the clerk's voice rang out from the front, calm but loud. You got 5 seconds to leave before I call the cops. A pause. Silence. Then the bell again, twice more. She stayed down a little longer, making sure. Then finally rose, legs still shaking, heart pounding in her ears. The clerk was still behind the counter, barely looking up. You good? He asked. She nodded. You don't look good. She looked at her reflection in the glass fridge door. Hood pulled tight, eyes tired, hair broken, but in her hand, the truth was still hers. She exhaled, slow and steady, then opened her messages, selected the video again, and hit post. The video hit social media like a lit match to dry grass, quiet at first, barely noticed, then everywhere all at once. It didn't go up with hashtags or flashy captions, no filters, no edits, no music laid underneath, just raw footage, a single clip, 38 seconds long, posted from Talia's account, with nothing but one sentence written above it. This is what happened before the fight. No drama, no threats, just the truth. At first, only a handful of people saw it. Her classmates, some of the same students who had watched her get dragged online the day before, the ones who had whispered in hallways and reposted the fight with laughing emojis, were now watching the beginning for the first time. They saw Brad pulling out the clippers, They heard Trevor telling him to hold her still. They saw Talia scream, twist, fight to get free. They saw hair fall, and then they saw her fight back. The mood shifted fast. Messages began stacking in her inbox. First from kids she barely talked to, then from people she didn't even know. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was like that. That wasn't a prank. That was assault. I took the other video down. I reposted yours." By midday, the clip had jumped from private stories to bigger platforms. A local community page picked it up. Then, a student-run news account from a neighboring high school. Within hours, it had spread across the city. Teachers started seeing it. Parents, coaches. By evening, local journalists were sharing it, asking questions about the school's handling of the situation. The tone changed overnight. Talia sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her screen with her parents on either side. Her mother kept one hand on her shoulder. Her father had pulled up every account reposting the clip, and made a list of verified ones to track who was saying what. Across them all, a new conversation had started. Why was she suspended? Why did the school ignore this? How is this just a fight when she was clearly attacked first? People weren't just watching anymore. They were choosing sides, and more of them were standing on hers. The superintendent's office issued a statement by the next morning. Brief, stiff, acknowledging that new evidence had come to light and promising a full and immediate review of the incident involving students at Madison High. They didn't say her name. They didn't say what had changed. But everyone knew. The school tried to catch up. Principal Grant sent out a campus-wide email, 3 paragraphs long, all formal language and vague concern. There was no apology, no correction, just a commitment to take all reports seriously and maintain a safe environment for all students. Talia's inbox kept growing. Messages from girls at other schools, girls with natural hair, girls who'd been targeted, girls who just wanted to say thank you. They did the same to me in middle school. No one believed me. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for all of us. You're a beast. Respect. Even Ava, who had been quiet since the day of the fight, reached out with a voice message. It was short, shaky, but sincere. "I should have said something. I should have done more. I'm proud of you." The pressure mounted fast. Parents demanded answers. One showed up at the front office in the middle of the day and refused to leave until she spoke with someone from the district. Students started walking out of class in small groups. A group of seniors posted a petition to have the school issue a formal apology and lift Talia's suspension. By the next morning, it had over 2,000 signatures. And while all of this unfolded, while the phones buzzed and the voices rose and the comments poured in, Talia stayed still. Not quiet, just still. She watched it happen, not like someone shocked by the attention, but like someone who had finally seen a fire catch after lighting the match with her own hand. Her mother kept checking in, asking if she wanted to speak out more, if she wanted to do interviews, write a statement, go live. But Talia shook her head each time. "Not yet," she said. "Let them talk first." She wasn't done gathering momentum, because she knew how this worked now. People believed what they were shown, not what they were told. And the moment the world started watching, really watching, was the moment the school stopped controlling the story, and she wasn't going to let them take that back. By Monday morning, the front parking lot of Madison High looked less like a school zone and more like a courthouse under pressure. Cars idled along the curb with blinking hazard lights. Parents stepped out in polished shoes and stiff suits, and the local news van returned for a second day in a row. Protest signs bobbed in the wind across the street. It was assault. She deserves justice. Suspend the boys. Held by students, alumni, and parents who weren't content to let the school smooth things over with a carefully worded email. Inside, tension stacked like chairs in a locked room. The front office echoed with clipped voices, ringing phones and low murmurs that stopped every time a door opened. Teachers passed by with their eyes down. Some nodded at Talia when they thought no one was looking. Others didn't dare meet her gaze. She sat outside the counselor's office, hood down, arms folded, her face calm but unreadable. Her mother had refused to let her come alone. Coach Renee stood leaning against the wall nearby, arms crossed, back straight, saying nothing but watching everything. Talia's father had taken the day off from work. He sat beside her now, his phone in hand, not texting, not scrolling, but taking notes. Every name, every time, every word that might matter later. Across the hallway, the bully's parents filed in. First Brad's, then Trevor's, then Cole's. None of them made eye contact. Brad's father wore a gray suit and a scowl. His mother clutched a folder and walked like she had somewhere more important to be. Trevor's mom looked flustered, clutching tissues she hadn't used yet. Cole's father muttered under his breath and shook his head when he passed Talia, like this was all some ridiculous misunderstanding. The conference room door opened. Principal Grant stood at the threshold. Tight smile stretched across her face like a rubber band one pull from snapping. "We'll begin now." Inside, the seating arrangement said everything. The boys and their parents on one side, the principal and Mr. Halverson at the center, Talia and her parents on the other. No lawyers, yet, but the room had that energy. Everyone felt it. Brad's father started first. "I want to begin by reminding everyone that these are children we're talking about. Teenagers. They made a mistake." Coach Renee cut in before he could finish. "A mistake is tripping in the hallway. A mistake is saying something stupid and realizing it after. This wasn't a mistake. This was an assault." Brad's mother leaned forward, voice sharp. "We understand that emotions are high, but let's not exaggerate. It was just a prank that got out of hand." "She was held down," Renee said. "They used clippers on her head. That's not a prank. That's battery." "They're boys," Trevor's mother added quickly. "And boys sometimes don't think. They didn't mean for it to go so far." "And if she hadn't fought back," Talia's father said, his voice calm but firm, "what would have stopped them?" "A teacher who wasn't even in the room?" Principal Grant tried to speak then, raising her hands. "Let's remain respectful. We are reviewing all footage and testimonies, and the district is conducting an internal—" Talia's voice cut through it all. "No one would have believed me if I didn't post that video." Everyone turned. "I told the truth from the beginning, and you suspended me. You let them walk around like they didn't do anything. And now that people saw what actually happened, you want to have a meeting?" She stood. "I was humiliated, in front of a room full of people, on video. And instead of protecting me, this school tried to silence me." "Talia," her mom said gently, but didn't stop her. The room stayed silent. Then Talia's father looked directly at Principal Grant. "We're not just here to talk," he said. "We're filing a formal grievance with the district. That includes naming the staff who failed to act and the administrators who mishandled the incident." Brad's mother scoffed. "You're suing?" Coach Renee stepped forward, voice clear. "That's right. Civil action. For assault, for negligence, and for emotional trauma. This wasn't just an incident. This was a violation. And someone's going to be held accountable." Trevor's father shook his head. "Come on. This'll ruin their futures." Talia's mother turned to him. They weren't thinking about her future when they held her down. The room fell quiet again. There was no resolution by the end of the meeting. Just stares, tension, a few muttered promises to review everything and communicate updates. But by the time Talia and her parents walked out of that office, they had made their position clear. They weren't asking for fairness anymore. They were demanding it, with legal backing and proof in their hands. That afternoon, news of the potential lawsuit spread fast. A copy of the legal complaint hit social media by evening, shared by a student-run news page and picked up by local reporters soon after. The school tried to issue a bland statement. "We do not comment on ongoing legal matters." But that didn't stop the wave. A second wave of protest signs appeared at the school gates the next morning. Only this time, the signs didn't just call for suspensions. They called for firings. and some were aimed straight at the principal's office. By Thursday morning, Madison High was no longer just a school with a scandal. It had become the center of something larger. The lawsuit filed by Talia's family had spread through the city like wildfire, sparking not just conversation, but reckoning. The words civil action had a different weight when paired with phrases like student-on-student assault, administrative negligence, and racially motivated harassment. Local papers ran front-page stories. Parent groups started holding emergency meetings. Community leaders, some of whom hadn't set foot inside a high school gymnasium in years, were suddenly speaking out. And at the center of it all stood Talia. She didn't ask for interviews, but they came anyway. Reporters camped near the school's entrance. Microphones were held out as she left campus, cameras following her every move. Her parents handled most of the responses, polite, composed, but never backing down. They didn't talk about damages or dollar amounts. They talked about accountability, about how no student should have to go through what their daughter endured. They made it clear this wasn't just about punishment, it was about change. Inside the school, tension buzzed behind every door. Teachers who had once stayed silent now whispered openly in staff rooms. Some showed support in small, cautious ways, checking in on Talia in the hallway, stopping her to say they saw the video, and that they were sorry they hadn't stepped in sooner. A few had been instructed not to comment at all. Others defied that order, knowing full well their jobs might be at risk. Mr. Halverson, the teacher who left the classroom during the attack, had not returned since the meeting. His absence was labeled administrative leave, though no one knew whether it would become permanent. Rumors spread that he'd lawyered up too, worried that his name might appear in a separate part of the lawsuit. Students whispered that he'd already been asked to resign. Others said he was fighting to keep his pension. Principal Grant, however, remained at her post, but barely. Her daily announcements were shorter now, more rehearsed. Her tone had gone flat. When she walked through the halls, the usual nods and polite greetings vanished. Her posture was the same, but her control was gone, and she knew it. The power that once kept students in line, that once silenced uncomfortable questions, was slipping away one headline at a time. At lunch, students gathered in the courtyard with signs and flyers. They weren't loud. They didn't block doors or disrupt classes, but their presence was enough. One poster read, "Protect Talia, Fire Grant." Another said, "Our silence was complicity." Even younger students who had no connection to the fight sat down in the grass, holding printed stills from the video. Talia's arms pinned down, Brad's grin frozen in mid-motion, the clippers mid-air. By afternoon, the school board issued a statement of its own. Lengthier this time, more deliberate in its language. They announced the creation of an external review board to investigate the school's handling of the incident. The board would include civil rights advocates, local education leaders, and student representatives. For the first time, the district publicly acknowledged that what happened to Talia Monroe had raised significant questions about equity, safety, and administrative response within our schools. It wasn't an admission of guilt, but it was a shift. That night, during dinner, Talia's mother sat with her laptop open, scanning messages from the family's legal team. Her father took calls in the next room, one with a parent from another school, another with a local youth advocacy group who wanted to support the case. The lawsuit had started as a single thread, but now it was tugging at something much larger. Talia sat quietly across from her mother, eating slowly, the noise of it all starting to blend together. She hadn't changed her hair. She left it as it was, raw, uneven, and untouched. She wore it as a reminder, not of what they did, but of what she reclaimed. "Are you sure about the deposition next week?" her mother asked. Talia nodded. "I want to say it in my own words." Her mother paused, watching her carefully. "It's not going to be easy. It wasn't supposed to be." There was no anger in her voice anymore, just resolve. Later that evening, as the sky turned to dusk, a message popped up on her phone. A teacher from another school in the district had sent it. Someone she didn't know. "You're making people nervous in the right way." Keep going. She stared at it for a moment, then set the phone down. She didn't need praise. She didn't need applause. What she needed was for the truth to keep moving. And it was. The building felt heavier that morning. The building felt heavier that morning. Not quieter, just slower, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Students moved through the halls differently now, heads low, voices soft, some unsure how to act, others still pretending nothing had changed. But beneath that surface routine, the entire school was unraveling one thread at a time. Talia felt it with every step. She had returned not because the suspension had ended, but because her family insisted she walk in like she belonged, because she did. And every moment she spent hiding would only let them shrink her story back into the kind of silence it started in. So she walked in with her head held high, hair still uncut, still uneven, and more powerful for it. She no longer looked for who stared. She let them. By the time she reached her locker, news had already begun to spread. Someone on the inside had leaked the latest development to the students before any staff could prepare a statement. And now the school hummed with it. Principal Grant was being removed. Not reassigned, not on leave. Removed. The district's decision hadn't been publicized through a press conference or morning bulletin. It had arrived through a meeting held the night before, off campus, led by the superintendent and several board members who, for once, weren't interested in saving face. The lawsuit, the community backlash, the threat of discovery, the cost of inaction had grown too high. A school could survive bad PR. It couldn't survive losing half its enrollment, sponsors, and public trust. Students whispered in clusters outside their homerooms. Teachers exchanged looks, but said little. By mid-morning, the announcement came, not through the intercom, but in an all-staff email forwarded from classroom to classroom, worded carefully but unmistakable in meaning. Effective immediately, Principal Carol Grant will no longer serve in her current position. An interim principal will be appointed until the district concludes its full investigation. We thank Ms. Teresis Grant for her service and ask that staff direct all questions to the superintendent's office. It didn't say the word fired, but everyone understood. The same hour, Mr. Halverson submitted a letter of resignation through his union representative. The district accepted without comment. 2 security officers were reassigned, and the school board sent a letter to all parents outlining a new student safety initiative, which, among other points, promised a re-evaluation of classroom supervision protocols, harassment reporting procedures, and restorative justice training. Talia sat in class that day for the first time since the fight. Her new history teacher didn't try to gloss over anything. He simply greeted her, handed her a copy of the syllabus, and continued his lecture without pretending she hadn't missed a week. A few students glanced back at her when the lesson began, but they weren't whispering now. They were watching with the kind of attention that came from knowing something irreversible had happened. Later that afternoon, she was called into the front office. Not by a dean, not by an administrator, but by the interim principal, a woman named Ms. Alvarez, who had only been in the building 2 days and was still getting used to the parking lot. They met in the conference room. Ms. Alvarez kept her hands folded on the table, her posture straight but calm. And when she spoke, there was no practiced PR tone, just a voice that knew this was a delicate conversation. "I wanted to speak to you directly," she said. "I won't ask you to explain anything. I've read every report. I've seen the footage. I know what happened here." Talia didn't reply. She just waited. "There's nothing I can say that will undo what you went through," Ms. Alvarez continued. "But I can make sure this school doesn't treat it like an isolated mistake." She paused. "And I can promise you one thing. There will be no more looking the other way. Not from my office. Not from any classroom." Talia looked her in the eye for a long moment, then gave a small nod. That evening, the final details of the lawsuit began to take shape. The school had made its moves, but the case wasn't going away. The fight wasn't just about Talia anymore. It was about making sure what happened to her never happened to anyone else. Her parents met again with their attorney, reviewed the discovery process, and discussed every name that might appear on the record. Witnesses were being contacted. Depositions scheduled. The district had already started soft outreach, hinting at settlements. But Talia's mother wasn't interested in a quiet payout. "This isn't about money," she said. "This is about the message." The house phone rang just before dinner. It was a national reporter asking for an exclusive. Talia didn't answer. She had heard enough voices. Now, she was ready to speak her own. The courtroom wasn't grand or imposing like the ones on television. No marble columns, no dramatic lighting, no sweeping balconies where silence echoed off the walls. It was a small room on the third floor of the downtown courthouse, fluorescent bulbs above, and beige walls that hadn't been repainted in years. But it was full. So full, the clerk had to turn people away from the doorway. Some were reporters, some students, some parents, some strangers who had only heard her name through headlines and hashtags and wanted to see for themselves if the story matched the silence in their own communities. Talia sat at the front with her parents on either side, the district's attorney across the aisle, and the school board's legal team behind him, flipping through folders and whispering to each other, pretending like the cameras weren't already focused on every movement they made. They hadn't expected this to go so far. Not really. They thought it would settle. They thought a few resignations, a few public gestures, and some vague promises would be enough to quiet the noise. But the noise had turned into something else. A case, a record, and now, a reckoning. The deposition video played in silence, projected onto the wall behind the judge. First came the classroom footage. Grainy, raw, undeniable. The clippers, the laughter, the resistance. Talia's screams. Her fight to break free. The struggle was no longer hearsay, no longer unclear or unverified. It played in front of a room that could no longer look away. Next came the interviews. A teacher from 2 years prior who testified about Brad's history of bullying and how it had been reported twice with no action. A student from another school who broke down while describing a similar incident with Trevor during a summer program. A substitute who had witnessed Cole taunting another black girl and claiming it was just a joke when confronted. The pattern formed like a blueprint, one piece at a time. Then Talia spoke. Not in tears. Not with trembling hands or dramatic flair. She spoke simply, clearly, and without apology. I was quiet because I was trying to survive. I didn't speak because I knew what happened when girls like me speak first. But I'm speaking now, not because I want revenge, but because someone has to make it stop. And if this school couldn't protect me, then maybe this courtroom can protect the next girl they try to humiliate. Her words didn't need amplification. They carried on their own. The room stayed still for a long time after she finished. When the hearing closed, the judge didn't issue a ruling. This was a civil proceeding, not a verdict. But the tone had already shifted. The pressure that once pushed Talia into a corner now pressed against the district from every direction. The board filed for emergency mediation later that same day. A settlement offer followed within 48 hours. 6 figures. Written acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Public apology to be read aloud at the next board meeting. Policy overhaul across all 5 schools in the district. Her family said they would consider it, but only after the apology came first. The media reported the outcome as a major victory. Talia didn't call it a win. She called it a correction. Brad, Trevor, and Cole had been expelled long before the court date. Brad's father pulled him from the county altogether. Last anyone knew, they were moving out of state. The colleges that once lined up with recruitment offers now didn't return calls. Their names were attached to too much now. Their records carrying too many articles to scrub clean. Their parents still grumbled about how the punishment was excessive. But even they had stopped trying to spin it in public. The case had taken more than a toll. It had shifted the ground beneath the school. By the end of the semester, a new curriculum had been introduced. mandatory racial sensitivity, and harassment prevention training for every staff member, student, and parent. Cameras were installed in every classroom. Anonymous reporting systems were launched district-wide. A student oversight committee was formed, and Talia was offered a seat. She declined. Not because she didn't care, but because her work was done. She had taken back her voice, and with it, she had forced the system to speak too. The new semester started the same way all semesters did. Different bell schedules, new faces in the hallways, teachers resetting their classroom rules, and students trying to pretend they didn't remember how loud last semester had ended. But the silence that had once kept the building insulated had cracked. You could feel it in the way the teachers watched more carefully now, in the way students looked at each other with a little more weight behind their words. Even the jokes carried hesitation. The halls had learned how fast a moment could spiral, how quickly a truth could rise when someone refused to be quiet about it. Talia returned to school without fanfare. No welcome back posters, no announcements, no official statement. But when she walked into the building that morning, every eye turned, some respectfully, some curiously, and some still unsure of what to make of her. She didn't walk faster, didn't drop her gaze. She moved through the hall with her chin steady and her curls full, shaped and grown out from where they'd once been torn. The patchy buzz had been trimmed evenly weeks ago, but she hadn't tried to hide it. She left it visible, a clean line running across the left side of her head like a scar that didn't need to heal in secret. A few teachers nodded. One even said, "We're glad to have you back." She nodded politely. She didn't offer anything more. She didn't need to. The boys were gone, their lockers emptied, their names erased from school rosters, their reputations, once untouchable, now followed by digital footprints they could never fully shake. Students whispered about what happened to them, what they were doing now, where they might end up. But Talia never asked. She didn't care. She had never fought for revenge. She had fought for truth, and the truth had landed where it needed to. Her parents had started smiling again. Not always, not easily, but more often now. Her mother no longer watched the news with her arms crossed. Her father had stopped carrying around that folder of documents he once clutched like a shield. Their lawyers still sent updates, mostly about policy changes being implemented across the district. Some of the updates were small, new forms, revised protocols, staff workshops. Others were bigger, leadership resignations, restructured reporting systems, partnerships with outside advocacy groups. The impact had gone beyond the courtroom. It had touched classrooms, and that mattered more than any settlement. Talia still got messages online, some encouraging, some cruel. She didn't respond to either. She had long since stopped reading comment sections, but she did keep one message pinned at the top of her inbox. It was from a girl in another state, 12 years old. A screenshot of her own uneven haircut with a caption that simply read, "You made me feel like I'm not weak." Talia had read that message a dozen times, maybe more, but she never replied. She wasn't sure what to say to a stranger who had already said everything. Weeks passed. She spent her afternoons at the gym again, training with her mom, gloves back on her hands, rhythm returning to her movements. She didn't spar the same way anymore, not because she was afraid, but because she knew now how different it felt when a fight wasn't just about fists. She had already learned the kind of battle that left deeper bruises than the ring ever could. And she had already walked through that and come out stronger. On the last Friday of the semester, her school held an assembly, something bland and official, filled with speeches about new values and district-wide goals. A few staff members talked about inclusivity. One mentioned restorative justice. Another spoke about the importance of listening to students. But no one said her name. They didn't have to. Everyone knew why those words were being said. And as Talia stood at the back of the auditorium, arms folded, hoodie loose over her shoulder, she felt no need to take the stage, no urge to be recognized. she had already been heard. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.